Sanatana, eternal, is not something that has a starting point in history. It has always been there. People may discover it, but that's not the origin of something different that was there. And besides the timelessness of this truth, the idea that Aham Brahmasmi, I am that, and the idea that everyone is Satchitanand is basically Brahman. It means that we all have the capacity to tap into that level of intelligence, to achieve that level of consciousness, and be that. And we don't have to depend on a historical revelation to someone else thousands of years ago somewhere. We don't have to learn the truth that was revealed to someone else somewhere, because we can also find that within ourselves. Now this doesn't mean that there is no history. There is. It doesn't mean that the history is unimportant. It is important. It means that history is not unique. It's not something that happened only once to one person. So we have to go around fighting exactly what he said and what happened. And there's no reason to falsify other claims of history, because if something happened in our tradition, could have been an avatar, could have been a rishi, could have been a self-enlightened master, we are not claiming that this will not happen to others, that this did not happen to others. And so there is no uniqueness, exclusivity, absoluteness claim in this system of ideas we have, and hence no reason to fight others who have their own ideas, and their own revelations, their own explanations. Now this approach to the truth I'm calling Adhyatma Vidya, embodied knowing, means that it is something I embody. It is part of the person who is learning and who gets that experience. It is embodied. And the contrast is with something I call history centrism, which means that the access to the truth is through somebody else's historical anecdotal account, which I don't have. I haven't experienced it, and I haven't even met this person. But thousands of years ago, somebody somewhere far away in the world made a claim, it's written down, it's been passed down through some institution, and I've been taught, and I'm supposed to believe that. And I'm told that this is exclusive in the sense that if I don't believe this, there is no other place I can get it. Because this event happened only once, it happened only to this person in that particular place and time. And if I don't get access to this particular truth, this particular knowledge, I will never be able to get this from anywhere else. So I call that that's a dependence on history, a bondage to history. So I call that history centrism. Now, it's very interesting how history centrism leads to conflict. Because if I believe in a one particular lineage of prophets, and this is the absolute truth that can't be found anywhere else, then, I'm going to fight for it, because if somebody else has an alternative idea, an alternative account of things, I must falsify them to be right myself. It's a zero-sum game. To be right, others must be wrong. So, because you cannot be win-win, that you're also right and I'm also right, you follow your path and I'll follow my path. So this history centrism is the underlying philosophy that results in exclusivism. And exclusivism then results in a lot of tension. So, to give you a good example of history centrism, if you look at the clash between Christianity and Islam today, which is a very serious clash, it is not just a political clash, there is a philosophical clash. There is a deep down philosophical clash, because both of them have a claim of history which is absolute and literal and final, and you can't be tampered with. And these claims are in contradiction. There is a certain element of contradiction. At one level, things are the same. Everything has some similarities. So they believe in one God, they believe in love and brotherhood and so on. But if you look at some very central ideas, there is conflict. So for instance, if you look at the notion, the idea of Jesus, in Christianity, Jesus is so central that he had virgin birth. And the reason this is central is that Adam and Eve commit original sin. And the original sin of Adam and Eve gets a curse that all future progeny of Adam and Eve, all future progeny, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, blah, 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 forever and ever, all future progeny of Adam and Eve, which means all of us, are going to be born sinners, and they're going to be eternally damned. This is the basic principle. And so, to save them, God has incarnated His Son, His one and only Son, there is no other. And this Son must take virgin birth, because if He took normal birth, He would be progeny of Adam and Eve. If Jesus had a normal father and a normal mother, and was born the way all of us are born, the normal way people are born, then He would be progeny of Adam and Eve, and because of the curse, He would also be born a sinner. So He would not be able to save other people, because He Himself would be a sinner. So to prevent Him from being a sinner, He cannot be progeny of Adam and Eve. That means he has to have a non-human father. So he is not progeny of Adam and Eve, because his father was not a normal human. So God as Father has to do virgin birth with His mother, and that therefore makes Him the only human being ever born and ever will be born who is not born a sinner, because He was not born the normal way. So therefore virgin birth is not just some random thing that you can say, oh, it's just a accidental thing, we can kind of put it aside. You cannot put it aside, because if you put that aside, then the whole system of salvation goes away. So no serious theologian will allow you to tamper with this idea. But then if you look at it from Islam's side, Islam loves Jesus, respects Him as a major prophet, one of the best prophets, respects Him, worships, all that stuff. But Islam thinks of Him as a prophet, not as Son of God. He is not Son of God. In Islam, there has never been a Son of God. Even Muhammad is not Son of God. He is only a prophet. Prophet means that he is an intermediary who is listening to God's message and transmitting to the rest of us. He's like public relations or HR department, saying, okay, this is the corporate policy, I got it from the CEO, telling it to you. So he's not claiming to be originating that policy. It is not his policy. He heard it from somewhere and is transmitting it to you. Now this idea of lineage of prophets culminates in a final prophet, which is Muhammad. So Muhammad is the final prophet, the perfect prophet. There will be no more prophets after him. This is very central for the Islamic axioms and the Islamic beliefs to be intact. And they will not tamper with it. They will not let you say anything else. They will not let you say, oh, we believe in Muhammad as a great rishi. No. Or we believe that he is an avatar. There is no avatar in Islam. There cannot be. The system is violated if you think there is an avatar. No serious Muslim will accept that. So the lineage of prophet culminates in Muhammad. And since Muhammad's message, which is in the Quran, what he heard from Allah, what he heard from God, he conveyed to us in the Quran, since that has to supersede the Bible, therefore, if Jesus is just a normal prophet and Muhammad is a normal prophet, Muhammad has brought a more recent, updated version. And so it can supersede the previous version. It's like now I heard there will be Windows 8 from Microsoft. So Windows 8 says Windows 7 is legitimate. It's not pirated, it is not a virus, it is not a bad thing, it is a good thing, but we are more recent, we are updated. So the Quran attitude is, the Bible is good, Jesus is good, but we have a new release, an updated release. So the updated release is only possible if Jesus is not Son of God. Because if Jesus is Son of God, it cannot be replaced and superseded by a normal prophet. You see, Son of God is of a certain stature, is God Himself incarnated. So that cannot be updated and superseded and improved upon by a normal human prophet. So therefore, for Islam to be valid in its claim, Jesus is downgraded from Son of God to prophet. You ask any Imam, and I've had many interfaith dialogues, you ask any Imam, you like Jesus, you have a great respect for Jesus, you honor Him as a prophet, are you willing to accept Him as Son of God? You have to be very clear about your question and not settle for any way of escaping the question. There are people who try to escape the question, avoid the question because they want to be politically correct. But if you're very adamant and very stubborn about asking this question, demanding that, okay, tell me, is he a son of God or not a son of God? The answer in 100% of the cases is that he is not son of God. Now you take that Islamic stance on Jesus, you take it back to the Christians and say, okay, we're willing to accept him as a great prophet, one of many. And there were prophets before him and there was Muhammad after him. But he's no son of God. Christians cannot accept that because the whole system of salvation is gone. If he didn't have virgin birth, if he's not God himself incarnate, then the whole system of salvation is gone. So this is an example where you have historicity. Too much emphasis on a literal idea of history, and the systems are incompatible, and they're always going to be having this fight. I'll tell you a story. I live in a town where there are some evangelists that go around door to door. So before they send them overseas, they want to train them in the neighborhood. So I knock at the door, and they are usually very young men, women, very nicely dressed. I can tell who they are. Most people in the neighborhood are not very nice to them, but I'm very nice to them. So the doorbell rings, and I bring them in. I pretend like I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I'm just a nice guy. So I bring them in, give them chai, talk to them. And they want to make small talk like, oh, this is very nice, yeah, this is nice. They're kind of just wanting to be comfortable, they're trained that you don't start too quickly, you don't get to the point right away. So and I also pretend like, well, they're nice people, we're just having a casual conversation. And I don't want to sort of make it look like I know what's going on. But one of them has to then break the ice. And they sort of look at each other like, okay, now it's your turn. So one of them says, have you heard the good news? See, the good news is that Jesus has come, Son of God has come, and if you believe in him, you can be saved from your sin. That is the good news. Because before he came, we were all sinners with no solution. So the solution exists to the problem. That's the good news. So I keep saying, have you heard the good news? So the answer they're expecting is the person will sort of argue, and then he'll say he has his own religion. They'll say, no, yours is not as good, not valid, ours is better. They're trained that. But I don't want to go in a direction which is predictable. Because then, if you do something predictable, they already know how to deal with it. So I say, what good news? Good news. Did the stock market go up? Good news. Tell me, what is this good news? So then they say, we're dealing with this guy. I mean, wow, this must be a good prospect because, he's really nice. So then they say, have you been saved? That's because they want me to talk about, So I say, I was never condemned to begin with. And so then they have to come and tell me that, we're all sinners, we've all been saved, then I want them to raise this issue of original sin. So I say, well, why are we sinners? You seem like nice people, decent people. I don't think you've done anything wrong. What have you done wrong? So they have to finally that this guy doesn't get it, So they have to they have to say, well, we're all sinners because of original sin, and they have to sort of educate me about this whole thing. That there's original sin, so we're all condemned, we're all born sinners, and the good news is that the Lord has come, taken birth, virgin birth, and his sacrifice saves us, and this kind of thing. So I keep playing this reverse psychology, reverse game back on trying to say, well, I don't know, we haven't done anything wrong, you haven't done anything wrong, why are we sinners, why do we need all this, And so then after a while they kind of figure that, this is not easy, this guy is kind of, not so easy, he's going to ask me more questions. So then I ask them, have you heard the Hindu good news? So they all say, Hindu good news, what is that? Because they've not been trained to expect that kind of question. So I say Hindu good news is that there is no original sin, we are not original sinners, we are originally divine. We are Satchitananda, we are originally divine. So instead of the assumption, instead of the axiom of original sinners that have a problem to be solved, the axiom of being originally divine means that is not our problem. So in fact, I tell him that your good news is that my disease is curable, and my good news is that I don't have that disease. So I have actually a website called hindugoodnews.com. You can go. I actually registered that, it's hindugoodnews.com, and I explain the difference between the Christian good news and the Hindu good news. So one way of being different is to take their idea of good news and explain that I got better news because we don't even have a problem. So this kind of obsessiveness with history, that some historical event transmits to us, is a very central problem they have. And you see, if you look at it, if you look at our tradition of Purva Paksha, studying the other, debating the other, giving an answer from our own Siddhanta, we should be, what I'm doing is actually basically part of our Purva Paksha. We used to do this with Buddhists long ago, but now we need to do it with Western religion and enlightenment and secularism, because that's the competitor today, and it's our part of our tradition to do Purva Paksha and have these debates. Now, if you look at this as a comparative religion issue or a Purva Paksha issue, the idea that Adam and Eve have done karma, very bad karma, therefore affects all their progeny, is not as per our karma theory, because if Adam and Eve have done bad karma, it will be in their own future life that they'll pay the phala. It will be Adam and Eve in their future life that they'll pay the phala, not me. I'm paying the phala of my past karma. So Adam and Eve's karma is their liability, and what my circumstances are shaped not by somebody else's karma, but by my own past karma. So there's an issue there. And also the idea that Jesus suffering the phala on behalf of other people. So the phala is transferred. There's a transfer of phala. So one guy can suffer and others can be saved from suffering because this guy suffered on their behalf, kind of like proxy. So this, whereas in karma, I have to suffer myself, or I have to go through the karma, I have to go through the phala myself for what I have done. It is not that I believe that Raju did this for me and I'm off the hook. And just by checking the box and saying, okay, I believe Raju did this sign, I'm a member, and therefore I'm off the hook, doesn't quite work. So it's sort of like a government bailout we have here, US government doing bailout. So this is like a bailout of humanity from the sin that all of humanity did. One guy comes and does a bailout. So one guy comes does the suffering, and anyone who wants to get rid of their sin, their liability, their karmic liability, I should say, all they have to do is believe that somebody has suffered for them and they're off the hook. So it means if you want to get rid of your debt, all you have to, there's an infinite credit that somebody has deposited in the bank. All you have to do is check the box and say, I believe he deposited it for me. And your credit is wiped out. I mean, your debt is wiped out. So this, if you really do a Purva Paksha, if you really do a philosophical analysis exactly like our tradition would do, you would be able to answer these kind of questions, and you would be able to say that this is a very big difference between one system and another system. And I'm not saying that that system is better or my system is better, but they're different. They have different axioms, and each system is consistent and logical within its own axioms. They are logical. If you believe in those premises, then whatever is being taught is valid. And we have a different system, our karma, reincarnation, the nature of the self, Satchitanand. With those axioms, we have a valid system. So it is not a question of one being superior to the other, it's a question of being very clear how they're different. And I'm not, in this book, I'm very careful. I'm being accused that I'm being, more sympathetic to the dharma side, and that's kind of true, because I even say that I'm looking at it from a dharmic point of view. But actually my bigger interest is to show the contrast rather than take sides and say one is better than the other. I want to show how they're different, so our people can be very clear that the foundation of dharma cannot be mixed up with saying everything is same because things are not all the same. There are these kind of radical differences. The Abrahamic religions have a unique historical person, a unique historical event, which constitutes their difference. So they can say, love thy neighbor, they can say we're all one, they can say there is one God, they can say, you know, do good things, don't do bad. I mean, we can keep agreeing on all kinds of things. In South India, the church guys, they go around wearing saffron, they wear mala, they have agarbatti and they do arti to Mother Mary, they do all that. They remove their shoes and they sit cross-legged on the floor. I mean, they do all the symbolism of Hinduism. All the symbolism. They become vegetarian. They do all of that. You know, so if you say, well, what differentiates my faith is, you know, we love each other, we do seva, they say, yeah, we do that too. They can keep saying that they do it too. But what they have, which they feel is indispensable. You cannot negotiate. You cannot remove that. That is the signature, that is the DNA of who they are, is the historicity of one and only Son of God. And everything they're willing to accept, everything, but that one item cannot be compromised. And so, and that item brings with it the exclusivity that there cannot be any other avatars, which means all your avatars are out. So you see, they are very clear on what is their point of difference around which you have to anchor the tradition and the faith. And then there is many other things where you are flexible, you can advise, you can give and take and adopt and all that. It doesn't matter to them. But that one item is very, very important. Similarly, in Islam, it's also based on a unique historical event and the unique historicity of the Prophet, who is final, whose teaching is perfect and inviolable because it's the actual literal word of God. And what has been said is literally every single word of God that cannot be changed or altered, no faults can be found. So this article of faith constitutes something that is their point of difference. And everything else you can negotiate, you can talk about nice things and all that. You know, what is our equivalent of difference? That's the question I was asking in this book. And it is not a historical event. So we don't have the same luxury. We don't say that, okay, it's Ayodhya, or it is, you know, Dwarka or something, or it is this particular, you know, person in history. Because our faith, our axioms do not say that something happened only to one person. The reason it does not happen only to one person, but is available for lots of people, is because the nature of the self is Satchitanand. The nature of each of us is Aham Brahmasmi. So since each person is that one, therefore you cannot say that it cannot happen to any of us. You cannot exclude one of us from that experience. That experience is available to every one of us. And therefore, through our history, lots of people have had it. Raman Maharishi had enlightenment, and Sri Aurobindo and Sri Ramakrishna, and you know, so many people. And so when we come across a person from a Native American tradition or an African tradition or somewhere in the world who says that one of their ancestors or one of their historical persons was enlightened and had a darshan and experience of oneness, we have no reason to say no. We have no reason to say you must be wrong and I have to prove you wrong. We have no reason to say that. Because our tradition is like an open architecture. It allows all these different things to exist. So we do not feel threatened because somebody else has a certain claim. It doesn't violate our claim. Whereas if it were a unique history, if God did something very unique once in a certain time, in a certain place, to a certain person, and that is considered to be the most sacrosanct article of faith, then anyone who comes and says something different, we have to negate him, we have to get rid of him, we have to debunk him somehow, because it's threatening our belief. We don't have that problem. So since we are not bound by an absolute unique historical event, and I use the term history-centric. History-centric to me is a term I coined to describe the dependence upon history in the Abrahamic religions. Dependence upon unique history, absolute history, which is different than we have history of Ram and Krishna, we have many histories, but we do not claim that there is an exclusivity and such that other histories have to be voided or removed and debunked and destroyed. We don't have that. We have a history, but there can be many other histories. Because God can be talking to lots of people. God can be visiting many times. God can be, because God is in us, in all of us, we are that. So many rishis have had this experience of being in unity consciousness. So we have no reason to claim an exclusivity of one history and one event only. We can allow many people to have believe in different kinds of experiences of the past. So given that uniqueness of history is not available to us as the differentiator, therefore the question comes, what's our differentiator? What is so different that if we understand that, we will be okay? We can negotiate everything else, but that is non-negotiable, and that is our signature. That is the DNA of who we are and what makes us different. So I've been on this journey for 15, 20 years of research and investigation, inner inquiry, debate, reading, and so on. And I found that there's two kinds of debate going on. One is external and one is internal within our own tradition. The external debate is with people in the Western traditions, both religious and secular, to figure out what about their faith is so critical that they will not give it up, that is really the foundation of their faith, and other things that they're willing to be flexible on. I needed to understand that through a series of conversations with experts. And internal, within our own Dharma family, I've been having debates with Advait Vedantins, Vishishta-Advait Vedantins, Achint Bhed of Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Aurobindo people, Kashmir Shaivites, Vaishnavites, ISKCON people, Ramakrishna Mission people, Chinmaya Mission people, many kinds of denominations, Tantra people, Buddhists, to see if I can come up with something which is distinct compared to the Western thought, and yet common within the Dharma. Now this is a very difficult job, and I didn't know anyone who attempted that, because I'm not writing a treatise on what is Dharma. I'm writing a treatise on what is different than the other family. There is a family called the Abrahamic family, and I want to construct, there's a family called the Dharma family. So I need to find out what is common within the Dharma family, while there's differences within. There are internal differences like any family has, but there are some commonalities within this family, and I wanted to identify what they are, and that's what this book has done, is to identify what is common among the Dharma family that is distinct from the other family. That is what I've discovered for myself and would like to share. So, if the commonalities of Dharma are too broad and too general, like we love each other, truth is one, then it's so broad that all the Abrahamic religions are also included. You cannot say that they're not believing in truth is one and we love each other, because they are. So this type of a definition is too broad for my purpose. On the other hand, if I go very narrow, in order to separate from the Abrahamic religions, if I take a very narrow view of what is Dharma, while I'm successful in differentiating from the Abrahamic religions, because it's such a narrow definition, I will also have tension with other Dharma traditions. It becomes too narrow, and therefore there is internal fragmentation among the Dharma traditions. So if it's too narrow, too sharply defined, too detailed, then you'll have problems with all the different traditions of Indian Dharma fighting, and that's been going on for a long time, and I didn't want to create one of those, and I'm not strong enough to reconcile that. That's an old debate that's going on. And if it's too broad to accommodate all the Dharma, then you also end up accommodating all the world's religions. So this has to be done very carefully. It has to be done just right. There has to be a sweet spot where there's a commonality within the Dharma and a difference with respect to the non-dharmic civilizations. And that's where I found 4 major points of difference which I feel satisfy these two requirements, that each of these points of difference is sufficiently different vis-a-vis Western thought and sufficiently common vis-a-vis the dharmas internally. So that's the purpose of the book. Because now you can, using these points, create a sense of pan-dharmic family resemblance and a sense of unity and a sense of identity, and yet have something that is not sort of being digested and appropriated and merged into becoming a subset of Christianity. Because the things that are common will just get digested into Christianity.